Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan. And DigitalOcean. Go to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code Here's the Thing, all one word like you're slurring it, and spin up your own Linux rig for free. And Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged and invest in your mind while saving some money. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 436. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Hello, Noah. We got a big show coming up finally on the Linux Action Show. We've been working on it for a while. It is our review of OpenMediaVault. We're going to specifically look at version 3 and see what it offers, and see as the product overall, 2 and 3, how do they stack up against FreeNAS? What extra things do you get besides it being based on Linux that you don't necessarily get on FreeNAS? We'll tell you all about that. Plus, in the news segment, we got a brand new shiny version of GNOME, and it's a bigger deal than you might realize because of the stuff going on behind the scenes. We'll talk about that. Plus, Lenovo made fools of themselves this week. You may have heard about all of the controversy, but do you know the root reason behind all of it and who the pitchforks should actually be pointed at? We'll discuss that. And then in the feedback segment, we got your emails. But before all of that, Noah, you know what we got?
We got the picks.
You got it. We got the picks. And I wanted to make sure we had a themed matched episode this week. So the desktop pick has a theme to it, and the Spotlight has a theme to it as well. The Runs Linux, though, totally no theme. Nope, totally threw out the theme, but I couldn't help but include this one.
Does it follow the theme of something that runs Linux?
It does indeed, sir. So we'll get there. In fact, if you haven't heard about the Moto mod, we'll tell you more about it in a moment, but it's a new concept that Motorola has been working on for a while, since even before the Lenovo purchase, where you have a phone that's a base, like intelligence, it's a base Android, and then you can stack stuff on it using their connector. And there is a pretty
modular phone.
Yeah, and this is one that can actually bring to market using the Moto X, and this tells you a little bit about it, and you'll see where the Linux comes in.
As one of my favorites, a Raspberry Pi hat adapter. This board lets you take Pi hats that exist, there's hundreds in the market already, and just write some firmware for them. We currently have 4 personality cards, an audio personality card, battery and charging is very common, display, that's one of our more complex ones, and our raw sensor interface. From a hardware standpoint, you'll need a Moto Z, that is a requirement. You'll need a USB Type-C cable and a computer running Linux. That is to start. Really it.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? You gotta run Linux in order to use these things. So these stacks are, I'm gonna be honest with you, Noah, they've really got my attention. Now, there's not a lot that is super compelling at the moment, but the idea that you could put a Raspberry Pi hat, so they have a module you snap on there, and then a Raspberry Pi hat board, I mean, woo! Now we are cooking with some serious gas. That opens up the door to a lot of things that some of us may already own or tinker with. You will probably have to do your own custom firmware, but they have an actual pretty aggressive outreach, I would call it, to developers right now to get some interest around this thing. So you got to have a Moto Z to do it.
Let me ask you something, just a totally side rant, but the kind of people that are interested in modularizing a phone and then buying modules and putting them together, making a phone, aren't those the same kind of people that dislike marketing terms like cloud and personality cards? Why can't we call it, a Wi-Fi module and a WAN module?
I don't know for sure. I think personality might be a vernacular that's from the industry. That might be a personality card. I think I've heard of modular accessory cards called that before in the past. So I don't know. I might give them a pass on that. I think you're right. I think it's like in the consumer space, it's folks like you and I and the good people watching the show or listening. But I think the industrial space, it could be potentially huge.
Sure.
I'll give you a possibility. I mean, we're talking, you got to start somewhere and you got to start sometime. But if you go a decade down the road, it may be damn near any workload that ever required a custom-built PC might require a custom-built phone, and you've got to be able to do that somehow. Industries, manufacturing and all these kinds of really esoteric machineries that they have to run, or sensor requirements they might have to have, or monitoring capabilities. Android will serve as a base platform for them to develop, because Android Studio is part of how you do this, so that's the base platform for creating the applications.
Sure. And
then you just need a nice, reliable, modular, maybe widely accepted platform standard to do this with. And it maybe only, sells 1 or 2% in the consumer space ever. But probably that's If you look at high-end like rack-mountable hardware and server motherboards from like and cases from like Supermicro, they probably sell a very, very small percentage to the regular consumer base and probably sell way more revenue-wise to business, I would think. Might be
that makes
similar.
sense. Yeah, I think you're right. It just when I first heard that, I was like, man, there we go again with the marketing terms. We can't just call things what they are. We have to come up with the
it feels like it's not very. It feels like it's the only. Here's how I would like it. I would like it. So one of the modules they have is like a JBL speaker add-on. You snap it on, and the whole back's a speaker. Mm-hmm. If it was possible to get like a Litro type camera or something really crazy optics-wise with a snap-on, that might compel me a little bit. If I could have a phone that's a phone with an extra battery snap for the most of the time. And
my God. Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, everyone wants thinner and smaller phones.
Yeah.
I don't. I want a 2-inch phone, but I want the battery to last a week like my old Motorola.
And that's one of the things they've already got.
Whoa.
They've already got that.
Yeah.
So you could do that. They got that in the speaker already. Oh, and they also have a projector. It's all in the video that we have linked in the show notes. So they have a micro projector snap that goes on the back of the phone, and then the media, so like you use Plex or Kodi or VLC on the Android device, and it displays out the projector that you snapped on.
As long as it's a perfectly dark room and you can find a service that's within it.
Yeah. In their video, it's like the most impossible scenario where the wife is just holding it, or the mother's holding it in her hand the entire time, and they have a sheet in a tent. I mean, it's not a real scenario, but the possibilities are interesting, and it feels like somebody has to experiment with it. And Motorola's it's got some really bright people working on their team. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
sure.
cool. And the fact that it requires Linux is, well, it's a check in my box.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. If you want to run some Linux, check out our first sponsor this week, DigitalOcean. Simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the easiest and most intuitive way to spin up a Linux rig on their super great infrastructure. All SSD for the I/O, 40 gigabit E connections into the hypervisors, great data centers all over the world, New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany, India. Oh! I'm probably even leaving some off the list now, but what's really great about DigitalOcean is that UI. That interface. They have one of the nicest interfaces for managing virtual machines, bar none. Desktop or web application. And if you use our promo code, here's the thing, all one word, like you're slurring it, put it together, you get a $10 credit. DigitalOcean has rig starting at $5 a month. Get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer, and you can step it up from there, or you can use their hourly pricing. And then our promo code is really going to get you some distance because you get $10. Just use the promo code. Here's the thing, and go check them out. They have entire application stacks ready to go, or you can deploy a base system of Linux or even FreeBSD. They have block storage that you can attach. It's all SSD backed. They have an API that people have adopted in tons of open source applications, and the pricing is easy and it makes sense. There's not going to be any surprises. So if you're a server expert or a beginner, they've got something that's going to work for you. DigitalOcean.com, the secret sauce behind many open source applications that you know and love too. DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code, here's the thing. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. And by the way, quick plug for their documentation. Super good, really clean. They have pro editors. And they've just posted on the 23rd how to create an intranet with OpenVPN on Ubuntu 16.04. Obviously, this is made easier by using DigitalOcean, but there's probably nothing in here that's uniquely specific to DigitalOcean. So if you've been thinking about them, want to check them out, this might be worth your time just going there too. DigitalOcean.com, use our promo code, here's the thing. All right, Noah. I generally try to spend some time with each desktop app pick if I'm the one that picked it. Sometimes you surprise me, and a lot of times when you do surprise me, I end up installing them, and I still have them loaded on this machine right here. Especially yesterday when I was doing my updates, and I'm watching, oh yeah, I remember when Noah told me about that. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. So this week I'm going to recommend something that I'm about to experiment with. I haven't experimented with it yet, but I have gotten a lot of encouraging remarks from people that I really trust in our community about storage. So I feel really good about it, and it's pretty unique, and of course it fits in with the entire NAS theme of this episode, and it's called Greyhole. And we're going to tell you more about it in the review specifically. But Greyhole is an application that uses Samba to create storage pools of all of your different various hard drives and allows you to create redundant copies of the files you store in there. So essentially, if one of those drives fails, you have a copy somewhere else. And you can use as many hard drives as you like to be included in the pool. Your storage pool will be the sum of the free space in all of the hard drives you include. I think that's a really big deal because a really common question we get is, hey guys, can I do a system with a 1 terabyte drive, a 4 terabyte drive, an 8 terabyte? Like I got this mismatch of all these drives. This helps you specifically address this. Yeah. You can include hard drives of any size in the pool. It has per share redundancy, so each of your shares uses the space of the storage pool to indicate how many copies you want. So if you have stuff that's more important and you want to have multiple copies for one share, it's really slick. Now, it's not perfect for everything. If you have a bunch of frequently changing files, it's not a replacement for RAID 1. It's not like you don't edit, like if you have a bunch of like documents that you edit from a share and you're changing them directly out of the share when you're in the editor and then saving them back to the share, not good for that. But if you've got a huge library of media files, if you store ISO images, if you store lots of stuff that you want to archive for a very long time, like this guy, he even though he hates Skype, he stores debs of Skype downloads, so that way he just, instead of going to skype.com and downloading the latest deb, now he goes to the storage and pulls off the Skype deb. You store everything. YouTube videos that you watch online.
I store the things that I don't trust Microsoft to make available to me when I might need them.
Or Google. Yeah, because like some people, they go to youtube.com to watch YouTube, not knowing. He's probably like some of you out there. He just YouTube DLs everything and watches it offline. And so,
I do. Offline media, my last line in the sand.
I'm actually more and more with you all the time. This Greyhole software is pretty nice, and I plan to go into how it works technically in the review coming up. So if you're curious how they pull all of this off, I did some digging. And I'll explain it in the review coming up. However, this is a great opportunity to just take a whole bunch of drives that you might have laying around and get a whole total storage space while still having redundant copies in case there is a single failure. So it's called Greyhole at greyhole.net, and of course we have a link in the show notes. So what do you think of that? That's kind of neat, right?
That is really cool.
I think I want to do a full deep dive in a separate episode where we just review that. I am going to talk about it a little bit in context with our OpenMediaVault because it is applicable to the review. But I kind of want to also dedicate an entire episode on it. And also be sure to check out in the show notes what Greyhole is not good for. There is a notable list. It's nothing that I didn't really just kind of quickly summarize, but it's probably worth checking out. And I also have that linked in the show notes if you guys are curious about that. So now, in our Spotlight section, I want to talk about some opportunities that are coming up very soon for you to learn more in person about storage and about networking and all of the topics that we're going to cover today. So probably the first one coming up is the Open Daylight Summit this next Tuesday, September 27th, 2016, as we record this. I will be there with Wes from Linux Unplugged on Tuesday, and we will be walking around and talking and doing interviews and trying to wrap my head around what is going on with software-defined networking. What is Linux's role? How far along is this beast? I have a strong sense that there's like this just barely exposed subculture going on in Linux right now where a lot of super amazing things are happening in software-defined networking, but I don't really have good insights on what those are. So on Tuesday, I'm going down there. I'm going to try to wrap my head around this. I've already got like 6 or 7 interviews lined up with the folks that I'm going to talk to that are really experts on this stuff. So I'm going to learn from them and then come back and probably talk about it on a future episode of Linux Unplugged. Now, while we're talking about Linux Unplugged, since Wes and I are going to be out next Tuesday, which is when we normally record Linux Unplugged, we're going to try something a little different. And there has been a fantasy that I think every Linux user has thought about when they first switch to Linux or when they're trying something out. And it's, damn it, I wish there was just a number I could call up and ask somebody my Linux question and get it answered. In fact, we've even fantasized about like somehow connecting a mumble room with a phone bank where people could call in.
I actually had the rudimentary part of that set up because I thought I was going to need it for the Switch to Linux competition back in April. Then as it turns out, we didn't end up that. The culture, as we got into it, I threw it aside. But
so
we have the start of that.
Since we're going to be out this Tuesday, Noah's going to step in to cover Linux Unplugged, and he's going to run a segment, or basically the show is Ask Noah. He's going to open up a phone line where you can call in and ask your Linux questions live on the air, and Noah's going to be there. And if all goes shows as planned. We'll also have the Mumble Room there, our virtual lug, full of experts on many different topics. And so if Noah can't answer it, there's a damn good chance one of them will be able to answer it or help do further research or something. So it could end up being a hell of a resource for people if you have time to act. Of course, it'll be streamed live. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for that. And Noah, do you have a number ready for people to call in and leave a voicemail? Or
the voicemail is not active yet. I can give you the number though, and it'll be. I tell you what, it'll be by the time this episode. Exactly, by the time the episode posted, it'll be all ready to go. We're going to give heavy preference to the people that are calling in live, and I already have started a stack of people that have some questions. Everybody that's been getting in contact with me over the last week that said I have these questions, I've been telling them, hey, keep it until Tuesday. Call in, ask the questions there. Yeah. But yeah, I'll have that number for you. We'll get it. In the feedback
the concept being, if you can't make it live, we will have a voicemail line you could call and leave a question there, and try to keep it under 2 minutes or 3 minutes, absolute max. And I know that sounds short, but when you're on air and you hear it back, you would be shocked at how long a 3-minute voicemail. So the shorter the voicemail, the more succinct it is, the more likely it'll get played on the show. And of course, if you call in live, there's going to be preference to that, because the idea behind the show really is we get a ton of questions that come in all the time, and almost every single time we don't put the bulk of them into the show because they require a back and forth. They require that we ask a couple follow-up questions, get some clarifications, and so that's where the concept of a phone call came in. And
so the phone number is 1-877-347-0011. 1-877-347-0011. We'll have that in the show notes as well.
Oh, there you go. And so you can call in on Tuesday during Linux Unplugged, and of course watch it at jblive.tv. It'll be on the calendar. I kind of love the idea if we could use some of our production capabilities and calling infrastructure that Noah's built over the years and all of that to provide help to the Linux community. That'd be a pretty solid contribution that we'd be pretty excited about getting behind. So show up on Tuesday and to get involved. If you've had some questions, that might be a great way to get them answered. Ask Noah on this week's episode of Linux Unplugged while Wes and I are out. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Okay, so now we got more events coming up. This is coming up on November 11th and the 12th, and I think I will also be at this. I'm trying to talk Noah into going, but we'll see. It's Siegel. It's November 11th and 12th, and I haven't gone in years past, but usually someone from JB has gone to just keep tabs on it. And I think it's really gotten to the point now where it's grown into its own unique, strong conference here in Washington that is very heavily about Linux, but not just about Linux, and some other open source in general, and community. So it's Siegel, SEAGL, November 11th and 12th at siegel.org. We have a link in the show notes. I plan to be there at least for one day. Maybe you can go out and get a beer. We'll say hi. We'll have a chat. It could be fun. Maybe Noah might make it. We will see. Time will tell.
Say that one more time.
Maybe.
Say that one more time. I'm gonna throw you under the bus.
What, really? Why did we talk about it?
You never talked to me about it.
Yes, we did. We
didn't. You've never once messaged.
Don't make me pull up the Telegram thread. All right. So now listen. It's fine. It's good. It's cool, because I bet you could make it to this one because it's being held remotely. It's the Ubuntu Online Summit, which is November 15th through the 16th, and can't quite see it because it's cut off on the screen there. But we'll have a link in the show notes, November 15th through the 16th, where they'll predominantly be talking about, you guessed it, Ubuntu 17.04, because the new release should be out the door by then, I think. So yeah, those are upcoming events, all which are linked in the show notes, most of which will be
at. There's a subtalk on networking, specifically Wi-Fi. Maybe it'll work in 17.04.
I see where you're going there. It's like,
Wouldn't that be exciting?
What is his angle? I don't know quite what his angle is. I get it. I see. Yes. Hey, have we plugged user error on this show? We must have.
We have in the past, yeah. Don't you remember there was that one episode that we got halfway through the news segment? I couldn't even concentrate on the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
I was so ready to do a user error.
So we've been doing this new show, User Error. We just did 5 episodes. It's Noah, me, and the Beard. And just about in every episode now, we've been talking about Linux or on Rikai's new build that he's doing. And I really liked our chat. I think you and I had our best, most refined argument to how to successfully switch to Linux ever. Both of us had really great ideas to make it stick. And I kind of wish we'd done that particular segment in this show because it's super beneficial to anybody trying to get somebody to switch to Linux who's entrenched in another platform. User Error 5, we talked about that amongst many other things. Many other things. So yeah, go check that out at jupiterbroadcasting.com or error.show. What are you snickering about?
Well, it's funny how user error really is. the pinnacle part of what defines the rest of the network turned into a show. If you listen to user error, specifically have we done it live and you were listening to it live, you would already not only know about the call-in show, but you would have watched it be born, because the idea, we'd never talked about it before, like not even one iota.
Yeah.
And then we talked about one thing at the beginning of the show, and then in a concentric circle fashion, we looped around to it and said, we got to solve this problem, this problem. If we did all of this, we could knock all these things out with this one solution, and then boom, there's a show.
You literally hear a show idea completely be conceived in that episode, and we go from this might be a good idea to we're doing it this day in one episode. Plus, we talk about Linux on Rikai's new rig and why I ended Tech Talk today. All of those things in one show. User Error episode 5, and I think, is it under an hour? I can't remember how it is. 46. We did all that in 46 minutes.
Yeah.
Damn, that show was moving. So you can check that out at error.show. And also, do subscribe to the video or RSS feed if you've been enjoying it, because I'm going to be releasing exclusives, stuff that was cut, like when Noah had to run out in the middle of the show last week, or maybe I might put our entire, there was 2 entire segments that were just completely cut. I might put those in there, but I'll be releasing them to the RSS feed, which you can find over at the Jupiter Broadcasting website or error.show. Some good Linux discussion in there if you want more. Boy, we just mentioned Linux Action Show, Linux Unplugged, and User Error, and none of it was intentional to be pluggy, but sorry about that. We're really excited about some of the stuff we're doing right now, and we think you might enjoy it. So how about we stop talking about us, and let's do the news.
The news in this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Everybody, wants to go to las.ting.com, las.ting.com, get $25 off your first service month or your first device. Ting's on a mission to make mobile make sense. You just pay for what you use. You don't pre-buy a whole bunch of minutes or messages or megabytes. You just pay for your usage, and it's $6 for the line. They got GSM and CDMA networks to choose from, which means bringing a device is pretty good bet. Just check their BYOD page. They have great customer service where you get to talk to an actual human being, which is a unique opportunity and something that you kind of think, well, that can only scale so well, but somehow Ting manages to do it in a really nice way that feels like they actually genuinely care and they stick with you and really make sure that your problems are resolved. I've been like the very limited time I've had to use it, I've been really impressed. I generally just stick to their incredible dashboard and the app they offer on the phone, too. I like that they have the dual networks, so when I travel around, sometimes that's really nice to leverage that with the Nexus. And, of course, the account management tools from a small business angle, or if you have multiple devices, are just really nice. They also have great prices on devices that you can buy directly from Ting unlocked, like the Ansitel A392, $63. No contract. No early termination fee. You own it. They got, of course, the internet phones going up for crazy great prices. They got a bunch of mid-level and high-level Android devices. Oh, that Moto G4, $180. Nice. That, I got to say, the 5C is also $180 now. The prices have come down with the new release of the iPhone. And, of course, they got the Moto X, the Nexus, the OnePluses. Check them out. Go to last.ting.com and buckle up if you're in Centennial, Colorado. I'm now officially jelly. That's the next stop for Ting Internet. Ting Internet's coming to Centennial, Colorado. And I know we got some listeners there, so... Oh, man, I'm so jelly of you now. I cannot imagine the kind of prices and speeds you're going to get. So check it out. You can get more information if you're in that neck of the woods at Ting's blog. Just start by going to last.ting.com, and a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring Linux Action Show. Last.ting.com. So Lenovo really stepped in it this week. Between a botched response to a support ticket where they said an agreement with Microsoft had to lock down their devices, to upstream vendors not properly supporting Linux, we have ourselves what I officially call a full-fledged shit show. And Lenovo has confirmed that Linux will not work on the Yoga 900 and 900S laptops. That's that one with that sort of, I guess you call it the 360 hinge or something. I don't actually think it looks that good. But this has been confirmed by Lenovo that it will only run Windows 10. Here's what Lenovo had to say, and I think you and we should just read Lenovo's statement in full because it's pretty precious. So here it is. Lenovo says, as the world's #1 PC company, we continue to focus on bringing value to the PC user and creating unique and innovative form factors such as Yoga. Our customer Windows PC are specifically designed for an extensively tested and designed and extensively tested on Windows 10. Yoga 900 and 900S, this is a key line here, with their 360-degree hinges are specifically designed to maximize the touch functionality of Windows 10. Our Yoga design requires very specific, complex, and unique drivers that require even greater amounts of testing to ensure class-leading performance with Windows 10. To support our Yoga products and our industry-leading 360-degree hinge design in the best way possible, we have used a storage controller mode that is unfortunately not supported by Linux. So somehow, they claim to support their innovative 360-degree hinge design, they've configured their storage controller in a way that doesn't support Linux. Obviously, that's wrong, but we'll get to that. As a result, it does not allow Linux to be installed. Beyond the controller setup limitation, other advanced capabilities of the Yoga design would likely not work with current Linux offerings. Lenovo does not intentionally block customers using other operating systems, such as Linux, and is fully committed to providing Linux certifications and installation guidance on a wide range of suitable products, and they're listed here at this support page. So first they come out and they said, well, our agreement with Microsoft, because it's a signature PC, has us lock it down. And that was like, are you talking about Secure Boot? What are you talking about there? And then Lenovo comes out with this official statement where they say, well, to support our innovative 360-degree hinge, we've configured our storage controller such that it's incompatible with Linux and it's too fancy for Linux to support, which was really kind of an odd thing to say, that it just sort of made people double down on the criticism. And then the problem really caught fire when people on Reddit and on other sites managed to hack the Lenovo Yoga 900 in such a way that they were able to enable ACHI mode in the BIOS. So essentially, what happened was, it turns out Lenovo ships the Yoga 900 with a RAID mode turned on that Intel has not released support for Linux. They have not written the drivers, and essentially what this RAID mode does is it just doesn't allow the drives to bind to the operating system, and instead the driver manipulates and manages all of that. So the operating system is removed from the role of essentially managing the disk, and the Intel driver does it.
Terrible way to run a piece of hardware.
Absolutely, but it's the only way Intel can ship this thing at the power usage level they want, and at also the temperature that they want. When you don't use this, supposedly, things run hotter, things use way more battery power. So when they specifically designed it for leading industry battery performance, what they mean is they have to use this Intel driver that's only ever been developed for Windows to talk in RAID mode, which is probably also improves performance, from my understanding. Now, there has been some great takedowns of this entire situation. And I thought I'd help us understand that it's not really Lenovo or Microsoft, but the people we should be blaming, it sounds like from analysis, is Intel. So the issue is that the solid-state drives in this Intel RST mode are just simply not available for Linux. And the real question is why Lenovo didn't just allow users to just turn on AHCI mode themselves. Why didn't they just give users that option? That's sort of the Lenovo bad here. And Matthew Garrett speculates that it's likely Intel's fault. Lenovo had to do this, he speculates, because they've probably been unable to meet the power management needs and the performance needs that Lenovo needs to hit to be competitive. And so if Lenovo allowed you to turn this mode on, the device may actually not operate with the appropriate temperature settings, and performance would tank.
So? What I don't understand is I'm perfectly okay with companies basing their decision on the revenue streams, right? They say 95% of our customers want to run Windows, and 95% of our customers say they want better battery life and better performance. So we're going to make these changes to when you pull it out of the box, it comes with Windows 10 and has this kind of performance and this kind of battery life. That I'll understand. I support them 100%. Where they lose all of my support, and then some probably, is why would you stop someone from, if I'm smart enough to go into the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or whatever they're calling BIOS nowadays, and turn off a given feature, turn on a given feature, then can't I assume liability for if the computer runs a little hotter, or if I lose a little bit of battery life, or if I lose a little bit of performance?
Essentially, echoing Matthew's interpretation, which I kind of agree with, is to Lenovo, it simply came down to the reality that they would get more support calls if they allowed you to do that because of the downsides of doing it, then they have interest in people that actually want to do it. So so here's the issue. Here's the Now this is the fundamental issue: is when you have a company that doesn't start with Linux first. That Linux is something they consider for some of their safe computers. You have decisions internally that are weighted in a way that eventually screws Linux users. So the weighting for Lenovo was simply a very simple math. Well, we believe we could get 3% of our users calling with support issues if we enable this. And we believe 1% of our users will ever want to bother with Linux. They're obviously going to go with the 3% number, even if it's just a couple of percentages higher. It's a really simple, cold calculus.
Yeah, but that calculation doesn't even make sense. How can you have more calls coming in for a given problem than people that would be interested in creating that problem to begin with?
Yeah, well, see, this
doesn't make any sense.
That was the misunderstanding, and I think this is a problem that a lot of hardware vendors are going to be making for the next couple of years. There's more pressure than ever, and the pitchforks come out faster. If people get a whiff of Microsoft or Lenovo or any kind of foul play intentionally blocking Linux, it is a shitstorm online.
Good, it should be, because we have other vendors we can go to.
I think vendors will start subtly feeling that pressure more and more than they ever have. And as long as we have vendors like System76 that are releasing machines that are, their lineup right now is totally dynamite. And you have other vendors out there now that are cranking out great machines that are fully supported with Linux. You have that pressure. So they're getting gnawed at all ends, directly from users, with the people, pitchforks online, and then how that gets covered in the tech press and the branding damage that occurs from that. Plus, then you have all these other vendors with competent solutions.
But the thing is, though, it's one step even further removed, because it's one thing to say that System76 makes a computer that works right out of the box with Linux, all the buttons work, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got that middle ground, which is we designed it for Windows, but we don't really care what you do. And I think most users, myself included, are pretty tolerant up until that line. I don't really care if you make a computer that's specifically designed for Linux. It's not really what I'm going to get excited about, but you want to make something specifically designed for Windows, as long as I can do something, that's fine. Once you cross over that really hard line in the sand, which is you intentionally take steps to block an operating system, I know diehard Windows users that get pissed about that kind of thing, because they don't like... I
wouldn't say that they took intentional steps. If there was the only intention they did was we only have to think about Windows 10. This is a Windows 10 product.
What I'm saying is they took steps to intentionally remove choice from the user, rather than just changing a mode, whatever.
You're kind of banking on getting lucky. So you've been cashing in. The checks you've been cashing have been getting written for a while by luck. Lenovo has had no strategic guarantee that future Yogas, which kind of sucks because you and I have both purchased Yogas in the past and ran Linux on them and own Yogas running Linux.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a bummer that this has happened, because it was sort of the Best Buy go-to laptop that was of decent quality that you could pick up in 15 minutes if it was an emergency. So it's too bad.
And to be fair and to clarify, it's not like it was a completely painless experience either. They had a Broadcom card in there, and so it required a little monkeying around to get that to work. But yeah, it was a pretty decent laptop. But the problem that Lenovo faces is when you take that choice, again, you get these people that are even Windows users, even people that have no intention of putting something on there, are mad just at that option. I know a guy that's going to be pissed about that just because of it. And the problem that they're going to come up against is we've got other manufacturers. We got HP, we've got Asus, we've got Acer, all of which I bought in products, and you can install Linux on them just fine. So I think they're eventually...
I think what Lenovo made the mistake of not enabling AHCI mode or whatever it's called. I put that on them. There's no reason they couldn't have included that in the BIOS with just a... I have seen BIOSes before that will say this is not the recommended configuration. That's not an impossibility. I think, though, where the real blame must lie, and I'm gonna just include the Skylake bullshit that we've had to deal with recently, is I think the issues with Skylake that we've had have all been on laptops and consumer devices.
100%.
And now this not supporting this bullshit Intel RAID mode that's a total cop-out and not writing drivers for Linux is, again, because Intel, while they are great on the enterprise and they've been pretty solid in the past, as far as the consumer driver space comes recently, F you, Intel, you've been screwing it up big time. And this is another example how you're leaving a whole new, because let's be honest, Lenovo's not going to be the only manufacturer that has to do this bullcrap if this is how you get the decent data rate speeds and performance and temperature. They're all going to do this.
And here's the thing, it might be something, maybe it's just a specific thing to Lenovo, but I have worked on the machines, in fact, 3 weeks ago, I was working at a what do you call it, hair salon place that had this POS system that was that had that Intel RAID management thing in there. All I did was just disconnect one of the drives and install Linux on the remaining drive. And they didn't have their RAID 1, but I could use the physical hardware.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I really wanted to, and for everyone that's going to write in and yell at me hate mail, I could plug the second drive back in, use LVM, and get basically the same thing where I have the drives being mirrored. But yeah, I mean, we have ways of managing. You don't, as far as I know, you don't have to have the driver to write to the storage device, unless, like you said, there's inside of the UEFI you have to switch a setting. And then they take that setting away.
Also, you got to give a shout out to Bound Arrow, I think his name is. He was willing to rip his Yoga apart and figure out how to get this to work, and he managed to get it working under Fedora with AHCI mode, and he's got pictures up on Imager, which I think really is inexcusable. We've got documented proof that it was possible. You've got a whole chain of events. Lenovo not recognizing the fact that they're building a hardware platform that's not just a Windows 10 device. Like, they're still not wrapping their head around that, and I understand why. And you have Intel, who is just giving the middle finger to Linux users in the consumer space now for a long time, despite the fact that it's growing as a platform for DevOps, for people that are creating web applications, and for people that work in the enterprise at a level it's never been at before. Not to mention all the scientific applications we constantly see for it. So it's just becoming negligent at this point on their part. If you are going to be the premier platform provider of x86 hardware, including storage controllers, including networking, including GPU, including CPU, it is absolutely incumbent upon you to create drivers for all of the predominant x86 platforms, especially when you already have relationships and you already have developers on it. You've already got the departments. It's just simply a matter of you giving a shit. And so I put the end of the day blame on Intel for really wearing the D-bag hat here and not stepping up, because if there was proper support in the kernel, this wouldn't have been an issue to begin with. You could just use Intel's crappy RAID mode.
Yeah, and you know what? And all that said, if you don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Companies like Pixar will just buy their computers from System 76.
Yeah, and not use that crazy-ass RAID mode. So let's talk about something that I am super excited about. GNOME 3.2.2 is released. Not a whole bunch that's going to drive you to the repo to get it immediately. This is probably the least, like, oh my God, I got to have it release. However, if Nautilus has been bugging you, it's gotten major improvements, including integrated archive support now, which is done really well. Flatpak support's been bumped, which is nice because there's been some improvements there. And GNOME software has been touched up. Now that there's a lot of projects forking this too, I think this is more important than ever, including support for Flatpaks is rolled in there. I really like the new Nautilus stuff, or I guess Files is what it's called now. And one of the big features for Fedora 25 is Wayland support is continuing to mature, and it's been bumped up to usable for the majority of users as of GNOME 3.2.2, which is landing just in time for 25 since they want to ship that. Updates to calendar are nice. Polari. They got themselves a video as everyone does these days. If you want to watch it, in fact, maybe I'll play a bit of it because it's kind of neat that they're all doing these videos now. It feels like that's a nice way to spread the word. So here's a little bit of the GNOME 3.2.2 video, which also works pretty good in
GNOME
audio.
is developing a free desktop for the next generation. It's created by an open community, which provides a simple and beautiful experience for everyone. The application core is continually being improved. Many of the advancements were made by new and longtime contributors alike, together with GNOME interns from Outreachy and Google Summer of Code. Files has seen a lot of new development this cycle. Archives are now automatically extracted when opened. Files can also compress your data to the most commonly used archive formats, such as zip, tar, and 7-zip.
Not stuff that's going to blow you away, right? But stuff that's nice to have integrated in. They also have a new bulk renamer that they're very proud of. Like I mentioned, software has been improved, including Flatpak support. GNOME Calendar has gotten some nice improvements. I would say probably the number one thing, I wonder if they included in this video, is GNOME Builder is getting really nice.
Sure. GNOME is enhancing desktop security by building sandboxing technology with GTK, Wayland, and Flatpak.
All right.
With this release, developers can make use of sandboxing technology directly from GNOME Builder.
Yeah, there you go.
From the revamped header bar, you can compile your projects against a Flatpak runtime.
That's pretty cool.
GNOME 3.22 will be available through many distributions soon.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's in Debian Unstable, it's in Arch Testing, and in OpenSUSE Leap already if you want to get your hands on it. So it's moving out really fast, which is pretty cool. Mate also has an update. Mate 1.16 is out, and it has an interesting major improvement. After 6 months of development, the Mate desktop team are proud to announce the release of Mate Desktop 1.16. Wimpy says he'd like to thank every Mate contributor for their help making this release possible. The release is focused on improving GTK 3 Plus compatibility. Specifically, they've improved support for GTK 3.22. So as GNOME 3.22 is landing with GTK 3.22, Mate is shipping with the same support for that GTK backend. Why am I saying these words so much, all these acronyms and numbers? Because it actually matters. The 3.22 GTK release is the last development release in the GTK 3 series. GTK Plus 3.22 will be maintained as a long-term stable version of GTK 3. New development will move to the GTK Plus 3.90X releases, which eventually will become GTK 4. So this GTK 3.22 is going to be something that will be around for a long time. GTK 3-based stuff will be using this for a while. And the fact that you've got GNOME shipping with it and Mate shipping with it right out of the gate, good to go, is a nice start for what's going to be a release that will be around for a long time. Are you impressed at all that I just brought?
Yeah.
I tied it all together. I just tied it all together.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I'm actually am in the process of redoing my workstation downstairs, and I think it's going to go. It's kind of a big moment in my life. I have been sticking with Fedora 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up, and I think the next time I redo my workstation, which is now, I just got the new drive in, and I think I'm going to put Antergos in. I know.
What?
I know. So I was doing a bunch of research the other night, and I was looking at a couple different things. But the problem is if I was just doing Noah and Altispeed, where I was managing a lot of Red Hat servers and stuff like that, then Fedora still kind of makes sense. But ever since that split around Fedora 15, Fedora is no longer like the next version of Red Hat, where it's kind of its own thing. That path has been widening, and it's become less and less, and it's been less and less valuable to me for managing Red Hat servers. And at the same time, that's been happening, Antergos is being such a central part of Jupyter Broadcasting has been becoming more and more important for me to understand how things work. And so now I found myself, I have a laptop that sits on my desk, and its purpose is to run Antergos, and I figure things out on it, and I'm like, well, why am I doing all this stuff on here when I have this 6 display set up in front of me that's not running, So I think that's going to get redone, and as a result, I'll be switching my primary desktop.
Wow, the big multi-display beast!
Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, that'll be really interesting. So, not Elementary OS, not Ubuntu LTS, but Antergos.
Well, I wanted networking, and
fair enough.
Elementary is great, but I didn't have the best experience on more than 2 monitors.
Be honest, are you enjoying GNOME more these days?
Oh, I've never.
You preferred Unity for quite a while. Be honest. Come on.
That's not true. That's not true. I liked GNOME from GNOME 3 from day one when it was released. When everyone else was like, I want a minimize button. Yes,
I thought you were Mr. Unity. Unity.
No.
It's got a bar. It's got a thing. And
I do like the bar. But the only thing I liked about Unity was on more than 2 monitors. Unity has some cool things about multi-monitor support, which is kind of neat. That said, the only reason I started using Ubuntu and Unity was because at the time I started doing it, I thought that was the best chance I'd have at switching other people over to Linux. These days, I'm not putting people on Unity and Ubuntu. I'm using
put them on Mate.
Mate.
Yeah. So why didn't you go with Mate? That seems like that would have been your choice since all of your clients are...
Yeah, 2 reasons. One is because Mate is one of those things where there's really nothing left for me to learn. If I can do it on Ubuntu base, it will work on Ubuntu Mate. Second thing is I have a tremendous amount of I have a tremendous amount of what's the word? Trust in people like Wimpy to deliver a high quality product. So I don't feel like I have to constantly be on the front edge and make sure that everything's working.
I follow what you mean there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then last of all, the thing I don't like about it, two things I don't like about it. One is I've gotten too used to hitting a single key and launching something, not using Gnome Dude just wasn't really doing it for me.
Yeah,
and
me
Snaps
too.
just wasn't quite doing it. And then the second thing is, and I do this all the time, I right click on an icon and then I want to launch a new instance or a new window.
Yes.
And I can't do that in Mate. I can't open a new window or a new incognito window in Chrome or whatever. In fact, I was trying to do that today when I goofed up that camera thing. I was trying to open and I had to open Chrome first. Then I have to open an incognito window. Then I have to go back and close the original one. And so little things like that I just prefer Gnome. Plus the extensions are really cool. I have a lot of extensions I really like.
Yeah, I keep going back to it because I like that it's distribution agnostic.
Yes.
And I like that they don't have the same level of attention to detail and love and care that Elementary's Pantheon desktop does. Mm-hmm. But it's close enough that it doesn't trigger my OCD and distraction like, oh, gotta fix. I can just, get it out of my eyesight and it just does its job. Sort of like Unity really does too. That's sort of what I liked about Unity the most, is it was just sort of distraction free. So yeah,
when it has networking,
that's really interesting. So is that the build that we talked about on User Error, or is that a different? No. Oh yeah,
that's the build we talked about in User is the one I'm talking to you on right now.
Which is looking good and solid, by the way.
That does have Ubuntu Mate on it.
Just a quick side note, people that have been wondering why Noah's video and audio all of a sudden starts looking and sounding a lot better. We've made a bunch of behind-the-scenes improvements. We're always working every episode on trying to make the show better. And sometimes, like, we're surprised that you guys notice because we do it every week. There's little things we do, but sometimes we do something, I guess, that's bigger than we thought it was, and we got a bunch of people asking why Noah looks and sounds so much better. I think that was User Error 4, where we talked about the hardware and software setup that's making all of that. 3 or 4? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. 2 or 3. It was one of the first weeks. In fact, I think it was 2, because I think that was the episode I was so excited about doing.
Okay, well, one of the nice things in that show is that all of the topics are broken out in the show notes by minute, so you could just look at that and find it if you are curious about it. And, of course, all Linux, all open source, no Windows, no Mac. It's pretty awesome. So, that's worth mentioning, don't you think?
No, I agree. It's like, go listen to User Error 2, you'll understand the snicker.
Oh, man, if you listen to the whole... Actually, starting with User Error 1 is the show where we had the fight about it. That's User Error 1.
Really? Is that one?
I think so.
No way.
Yeah, so I guess...
that can't be right.
No, it is. It is, I think.
Really?
Yeah,
okay, then that's the one that you need to listen to, because that's the one where you talk about it. I swear it's 2.
It's because we talk about the fight in one episode, and then we talk about the fix in another episode.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah. I know, it all runs together, because it's only been 5 episodes. All right, so that's all the news. If there was a story that you didn't hear, check out, might have got covered in Linux Unplugged, but also you could submit it to the Linux Action Show subreddit at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. We look through the votes, the comments, and then, of course, try to feel if they're a good fit, and we match it up with the news stories that we've identified throughout the week, and we fill in our holes or see what you guys think about the stories that we're tracking. It's a very useful tool for that, linuxactionshow.reddit.com, if there's a story that you wanted to hear us talk about that you didn't hear on the show. Otherwise, that's all the news for this week. I've been working on this review for a while, brewing it around, chewing on it, mulling it like a piece of clay on a spinning thing where Patrick Swayze is standing over me, watching me work on the OpenMediaVault. I've tried it on different hardware, and I'm here to report my results. And Noah's been kicking the tires as well, so we'll give you our look at OpenMediaVault 2 and 3 and where it stacks up. But first, I want to mention our friends at Linux Academy who made this segment possible. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplug. This is a platform to learn more about Linux, where Linux itself is the core focus. It's not one of the things they do, it's what they do. The entire technology stack around Linux, things like AWS and Azure included with that, OpenStack obviously, but all of the fundamentals. You get study tools and learning paths to put you down a direct kind of content path that is planned by instructors for specific career tracks. They have course schedulers for your availability. They have labs and exercises to give you hands-on experience. They have instructor mentoring available and a community stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting members. It's a great way to learn more about something you hear on this show. linuxacademy.com/unplugged, and a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. So this is kind of silly. I got a full disclaimer up front. I have a goal in my new Lady Jupiter Studio setup that I am slowly building over time to use 100% Linux. And so by that definition, and it's something that I want to do just for the show, but also as sort of a benchmark as which to test these Linux solutions by. And in this vein, I've chosen to look at OpenMediaVault. I have a FreeNAS server here at the studio. I really like FreeNAS as a product. I've paid my own personal money for the times that I bought a FreeNAS Mini. IX Systems does sponsor TechSnap and BSD Now. And they are now the company. They weren't originally, but they are now the folks behind FreeNAS. They've taken it under their umbrella to maintain it and improve it a lot. So I am fully aware going into this review that FreeNAS is a thing, and it's already been the #1 comment I've received is that I'm making a silly distinction by not picking BSD over Linux, and that I should go with FreeNAS. And I specifically wanted to set out and see what a free open source Linux offering had competitively over, say, FreeNAS, or at least maybe matched up to FreeNAS if something really stacked up. So that was really my goal. And I know, Noah, you kind of also are a pretty established, happy FreeNAS user. So I was kind of curious what lens you looked at this with.
Yeah, not only am I an established, happy FreeNAS user, FreeNAS up until a couple of months ago was just well, you know what? That's just what you use, and it works and never really given me any problems.
It's got that
then
ZFS.
Then a couple months ago, a drive went out on me, and I took a whole day off of work. I was ready. I was like, you know what? I got to go fix this problem at home. And it ended up taking me like 15 minutes. Like, I pulled one drive out, I followed Alan's instructions, I put another drive in, and I clicked a button, and it was like magic, and my file server was back, and I never even really had to do anything. And then from that day forward, I was like, you know, praise FreeNAS, all hail FreeNAS. FreeNAS is amazing. I will stand by FreeNAS and use it forevermore. So when you said, hey, let's review OpenMediaVault, I was like, you go do that. I'll stick with FreeNAS, and I'll let you know how they compare.
Yeah. Although,
That's
to be
the
fair,
lens I went to it.
You did try it out. You did install it. Yep.
Yeah,
and we'll
because
talk about that.
the one thing that has always bothered me about FreeNAS, still bothers me to this day, even with ZFS support on Linux, is I really like the ability to take a drive out of any computer and just plug it into my laptop and pull data off of it. And I can't do that with FreeNAS. At least it's a little less difficult now that ZFS is on Linux, but it's still not quite as simple as plug and play.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else, and then we'll get right into it. Years ago, I really screwed up a FreeNAS installation, and I didn't do much. I SSH'd into the install, and I installed a few things, and I don't know if it's as fragile anymore, but it came down like a house of cards around me. And what I realized is that when I have something as important to me as my data, when it's the work we do here at the network, it's the stuff of my kids, it's my personal media collection, stuff that I've spent years cultivating, all of that stuff is probably more valuable to me than any physical possession that I have. And so I am not comfortable having something that valuable to me locked up behind a machine that I don't fully understand. In an emergency situation, something really goes to shit, I like having the confidence and I like having the knowledge available to me when I'm in an emergency situation. I like knowing that with OpenMediaVault, immediately one of the first things that drew me to it is that it's based on Debian. And so all of the knowledge I have around Debian and how to manage a Debian system, I can take to OpenMediaVault. And if I'm ever in a really desperate situation, I feel so much more at peace of mind knowing that it's Debian under there, and I can go get a package. I can Google something on Debian. I'm going to understand what stuff means. I know most of the paths by memory. All of that stuff is something.
You can use your general Linux knowledge to facilitate this one specific thing.
Yeah, and so it's something that's so important to me that that is really one of the things that pushed me towards OpenMediaVault. And since I only want to do Linux installations in Lady Jupiter anyways, I looked around and I thought OpenMediaVault really was one of the best offerings out there in this space. One of the things that drew me to OpenMediaVault right away is that it was started by one of the creators of FreeNAS. He actually worked on it. He forked Monowall, or however you pronounced it back in the day, and created FreeNAS. And then the project got to a point where they realized, geez, we've got to revamp this whole infrastructure. And at that point, one developer thought it might be better to go Linux-based, and one developer thought it would be better to stay BSD-based. And the projects forked, and it very quickly was named OpenMediaVault. And so its heritage is in FreeNAS, which was appealing to me as someone who's had a FreeNAS server now in production for 2.5 years that's been running flawlessly, which is all the proof in the pudding right there. I thought, okay, well, that's a great product. And this guy was one of the people that originally created it. And it's based on Debian. So we got two versions to really look at. There's the release stable version, the one you should be using on your hardware, and that is OpenMediaVault 2, 2.x. They've just recently revved it, and it's based on Debian 7. There's another version in development. It's been in development for a long time now, and I've gotten some good feedback from people we know in the community that are using it, and they're using version 3, several of them actually, with quite a bit of success. And so I decided to also go with version 3 for my primary testing, although I did look at 2. But I went with version 3 because it's based on Debian 8, and get ready for it, the big difference for me with Debian 8 is it comes with systemd. Yay! And as crazy as it might sound to some of you out there, that's actually a feature for me because that's my knowledge set now, is the systemd world. The Arch boxes and the Ubuntu boxes I all manage are systemd. And so to have my NAS server also be systemd is a big advantage. Plus, Debian 8 was actually released since my kids have been born, and so it was also sort of felt a little more modern, something I'd be more likely to get packages for, and more current documentation. Nothing wrong with Debian 7 at this point, and if you're really going to use OpenMediaVault in a serious business production environment or somewhere, you probably should look at version 2. But for testing, and I believe it'll be released very soon, I decided to look primarily at version 3. And there's some pros and cons there. And I think for you, did you end up primarily spending time with version 2?
Yeah, because 3 would not work for me.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, so I started with, I told Riz, I said, I'm going to try this on a spare box. And so he said, this is the version I'm trying, go ahead and download it. So I downloaded the ISO, wrote it to a USB drive, plugged it in, tried to install it. The install went just fine. But when I got done and I booted, I couldn't get a DHCP address for my DHCP server. I thought, well, that's weird. Went back and statically assigned an address and still couldn't talk to the box. Went back and used the 2x version. That works just fine. And so I'm not sure if maybe my network card wasn't compatible with 3 or something was weird, or maybe I got a weird ISO. I don't know. But I was sticking primarily with 2, and that's actually where I spent the majority of my time, except for I was able to get, I think I used 3 for, I downloaded the Pi version, Raspberry Pi version, and installed it on a Raspberry Pi.
So let's talk about that in a moment. I want to do that separately. Sure. So yeah, version 3's been in development. Consider that because it's a moving target, which means plugins might get created for it, and then something changes and the plugins have to be updated. There's not as many plugins yet for version 3, but the major ones for me, like ZFS and Plex and a few others I'm going to talk about, have been. So let's take a moment and talk about version 3. I've got it up here on the screen if you're watching. It has a very nice interface comparative to the current version of FreeNAS. In fact, I like it better than FreeNAS's current interface. FreeNAS 10 will have an entirely new UI, so that all changes. But they have really nice system information built in right here. It gives you so you can see my current uptime is 30 days, 20 hours, 23 minutes, and 16 seconds with a really low load average. This thing's not working very hard. And it's currently running version 3.039 of OpenMediaVault 3. And on the left-hand side of the UI, you have your split section. You have your system settings, your storage settings, your user group, and your user management. And I have not played a lot with the user management, but I know it's an area you looked at, Noah, and we're actually kind of impressed with over, say, FreeNAS.
Yeah, so you had talked about how you had botched a FreeNAS installation a couple of years ago by screwing around under the hood. Well, I botched FreeNAS installation. Yeah. So I botched a FreeNAS installation where I had set it up for this client, and they had a what they were calling the public drive, which is where everyone was dumping stuff, and then they had like accounting drive and marketing drive and HR drive and stuff like this, and they didn't want anyone from any of the other departments to be able to access those specific shares. And so I went through the FreeNAS installation and set up the drives as I thought they were set up correctly, the user management as I thought it was set up correctly, and then it was revealed to me a couple weeks later that is, if you SSH into the box, they could get to those other directories, even though the user management was basically by share, and I had to go back and change it and stuff, and it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And one of the first things that stood out to me as OpenMediaVault is when you create a user, that user and their permissions seem to follow them across the shares. And again, I was only played with it for a couple of days, so if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. But that was my impression of how it works, and so it was much easier. and part of it was I think that they just have less options available to you, and so like there's in FreeNAS there's do I add this permission to the directories recursively or this, and in OpenMediaVault there's just a couple little things, you check them the way you want and click OK and it's done. So it seems like it's a better choice for somebody if you're just getting started and you've got a smaller group that you're working with and you just kind of want to get them up and running,
or some home shares and just want them to work for everybody. I want to tell you more about my hardware setup specifics in a moment because I think it's kind of relevant, but I just want to continue on some of the nice UI features. Really easy to get updates. It's built in here. It's using apt on the back end, which has bitten me once or twice actually. I had a couple of repos that stopped working for a couple of days. But if you watch the output, it's all just apt commands it's doing in the background. The plugins are really easy to add. The OMV-extras is where all the goodies are. That's where you get your ZFS support. That's where you get mono. That's where you get Greyhole. That's where you get Plex. There's a bunch of different plugins, and more are coming out for version 3 all the time. Some of them don't work for whatever reason at this moment. I would blame the fact that it's in beta. Like here's Emby, for example. This is definitely one I want to try out. I click the install option. It's really easy. I say, yes, I'd like to do the installation, but it actually will end up airing out. Yeah. There's a dependency issue. I'm not quite sure. Maybe after I get all of the updates installed, everything will work fine. That happens with some of the plugins just because the versions of the OS are changing, the versions of the plugins are changing, so that's another reason why I say don't use 3 yet. But once that's stabilized out, this is going to be really kick-ass because these plugins take this from, okay, I got a file server and I've got some Samba shares, I've got some NFS mounts, I got users, it's good, it's fine. But the plugins are really what kicks this thing up. So I'll give you an example of one of the plugins that I like a lot. It's called SnapRaid. And SnapRaid, you can go check out on their website more. They have more information. But it's a really convenient way to take snapshots of your RAID array. It doesn't matter if you're using ZFS or Extended 4 or XFS. This is something that rides on top of that. It's fully configurable in the OpenMediaVault GUI. And it's one of these things you can run on OpenMediaVault that give you honestly some serious peace of mind about your data. So it's SnapRaid. In most cases, when I first started testing OpenMediaVault, I tried it on a couple of different rigs. I was doing ZFS. Because that's the hotness, right? That's the hotness. ZFS. Then I started looking at Greyhole and I started looking at SnapRaid and I started going, if I go with these two tools, I'm still testing them, but if I go with these two tools and I combine that with an XFS file format backend, which is a file system that I've used for forever since I worked in data centers in the early 2000s, and it's just been my go-to, super safe, easy to take care of, easy to manage, doesn't get fragged to hell. It is just a really great file system that is rock solid by SGI, and I have a lot of faith, and like I have a lot of faith in Debian 8, I can combine a file system that I know intimately well, and I can use services like Greyhole and SnapRaid to provide essentially what it was that I wanted from ZFS, for the most part, with the exception of checksumming. Really kind of easy with just a couple of plugins in OpenMediaVault. So SnapRaid is really nice. Another one I did is Shell in a Box, so you can do an SSH client right here in your web browser, which is handy when you want to just do some back-end stuff. In fact, before I get to Greyhole, I think I'm going to mention my biggest con about OpenMediaVault, and what ultimately will be probably the reason I'm not using it, and I'll tell you more. The UI is great, but the UI doesn't accommodate you connecting to NFS shares, other NFS shares. It'll totally allow you to set up an NFS share and manage who can connect to it and define what directories are shared. But if you need to connect it to, say, another data store, maybe you're going to use Greyhole, or you have an existing storage array in place, like in the case of Angela's house, that is established and you connect it over NFS, you can absolutely SSH into the Debian command line, and you can do an NFS mount, and you can mount the son of a gun, but at no point does it show up in the OpenMediaVault UI as a resource to any of the services that are configured through any of these built-in tools. So for example, if I go to the BitTorrent client and I go to configure where it should store files to, even though I have a 12 terabyte NFS array mounted right now at the Debian level, it will not show up as a device that I can configure the service to use. Only the locally attached USB drive array shows up in here. Now, this is manageable to some degree because things I really want, like SAB, NZB, and Plex, I configure through their own interfaces. And there may be ways, maybe I can make it show up as a device. I haven't monkeyed around with that a lot, but it's sort of a core functionality that I need that is lacking. So if you, for some reason, if you have some stupid reason like I do to have your file server connect to another file server for additional storage.
That's a pretty common thing though in larger businesses.
I know.
You know, I have a client, they're not even that big, but they have like 50 or 60 workstations.
Yeah.
We got 4 file servers over there. And if those file servers couldn't talk to each other, we'd be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I know. That's sort of why it's kind of a disqualifier for me. So I want to tell you why, give more details, and now I'm going to get into the hardware setup. So the main hardware that I've been testing on that's been running for 30 days here in the studio is a NUC, an Intel Core i5 4th generation NUC with 4 USB 3 ports connected to a 4 terabyte Western Digital Book Duo, which has 2 drives in a mirrored setup. And I like this a lot because this enclosure is really, you just pop open the top and you can swap the drives, and it comes with 2 Western Digital Reds by default, which work pretty well for my configuration. It also has dummy LED lights to give me health statuses about each drive on the front of the case, which is nice. So I've been pretty happy. It's like it's some storage we lug around here. So I have a NUC connected over USB to that, and that's sort of the local storage. And then I'm trying to connect out to another NFS server we have here at the network that has our established like media and production clips and stuff like that. And then I want to set up another OpenMediaVault box at Angela's house and replace a custom-built Arch NUC running all of her home management systems and media downloads and categorizing and media streaming. All of the stuff that they just use like all the time is running on this one little Arch box that I haven't updated for like a year. And I just want to take that NUC out and take a new NUC and put it in there running OpenMediaVault, essentially do a NUC swap, because it's the same exact, we bought 2 of the NUCs, and so I'm going to just swap them out and put OpenMediaVault in there, but it also will need to connect to her existing Synology. She has a DS412 Plus. It's just over 3 years old, and the damn thing is still running like a champ, flawless execution, and still getting updates from Synology. It runs Linux itself, and it is an NFS server that it connects to. It's got like redundant fans in it, and the CPU is passively cooled, so it's just this great little piece of disk. But I don't want to run Plex and SAB NZB and Couch Potato and Sick Rage on this tiny little 3-year-old Synology. I want to run it on the OpenMediaVault that'll give her a UI to manage the accounts and all of that stuff. So I have to solve that particular problem. So while I feel like it's just going to require additional experimentation there, but it has been sort of a roadblock. There's been several things like supposedly proper UPS support is via a plugin. I can't find that plugin. Maybe I know it's out there for version 2. I can find that. But for version 3, to get proper UPS support, I have to drop down again to the Debian command line and configure it there and manage how things should shut down in what order or what happens when certain power states are reached by editing the configuration files.
What does version 3 have that you're bent on that you don't want to use version 2?
You know, I think for Angela, I probably will put version 2 in production, but I'm not positive. Mainly, I really want Debian 8. That's a strong part, is because I do have to keep dropping down to the command line to solve these problems. I want that to be a competent environment that I'm more familiar with. So that's definitely a huge factor of it. Also, the plugin, that's where the effort on a lot of the plugins is now going, is to version 3. So there's that element of it as well, and version 3 is about to be released. And I absolutely don't want to have to upgrade our machine a month or 2 or 3 or even 6 after I've just set it up. I just want to set it up today and leave it for years. So those are kind of driving the decision there. But yeah, I know. Here's what I want to do is I want to use these different NFS mounts, and I want to combine it with Greyhole. And the reason why this is really nice is Greyhole is using a bunch of really cool Samba stuff on the back end. Essentially, it is a VFS module for Samba. And it's pretty neat. You define the storage pool by listing the paths of all the different disks you want to use. And then when the files are added to Greyhole Share's landing zones, the Greyhole daemon moves those files to 1+, for redundancy, to all the different paths you've defined in the storage pool. It then replaces the original file in the landing zone with a symbolic link pointing to one of the copies created in the pool. And then Samba is configured to use opaque symbolic links. What are in fact symbolic links to the shares appear as just normal files when you view the share as a user, so you don't even know they're symlinks because Samba is configured to hide that element from you. And if one of the drive dies, it does periodic re-indexings and just updates the symbolic link after a few minutes with the version pointing to a good working copy. So you can add if you can provide a path, you can add it to a Greyhole storage pool. So that means USB storage. You can mix storage, which I don't recommend, but a lot of people write in asking if they can mix all different types of storage. And what I would like to do is I would like to use this to potentially add additional NFS storage, because this NUC has limited USB. Oh, by the way, one of the things about the Western Digital that I've been testing on here in the studio is it has a USB hub on the back of it. So since the NUC has limited USB ports, the Western Digital drive has 2 additional USB ports, which is kind of nice. But I hate using USB as primary means of storage. I just don't have a lot of faith in it. I have 100 times more faith in NFS than I do using USB. So far, actually, in a month of testing, not a single issue. So I will say that. But if I'm going to bet on it for 2 years, I'm betting NFS every day of the week. And so I would like to be able to attach different NFS arrays to OpenMediaVault and then use Greyhole to sort of blend it all together as one massive storage pool to the end users, in this case being Angela and the kids, or Hadia, or myself and Rikai. And that's sort of my goal is using SnapRAID to protect my XFS setup to get snapshots the way I want them, and use Greyhole to combine back-end NFS shares. But this is like the weakest area in the OpenMediaVault UI. So it's like this total like catch-22 for me right now. So I think my takeaway from it is it's kind of boring, just like good storage should be. It has a pretty active community around it. And I think it's honestly competitive with FreeNAS, because it also, not only can you do things like Greyhole and SnapRAID, but you could also just use ZFS if you want. It's got a plugin for ZFS, and it's got a bunch of great utilities that you're familiar with that are really easy, one-click turn on, setting up rsync servers, FTP servers, managing all of that stuff in one nice UI. It is absolutely a perfect small business server solution that you stick in the corner. It could be your home server. And if you, like me, want to do on Linux-only setup, I don't really think you're losing a lot by choosing OpenMediaVault, especially when version 3 ships, over FreeNAS. I don't see a big feature gap here, and I'll take the Linux-based Debian solution over FreeNAS most of the time. The only thing that would weigh me towards FreeNAS at this moment in time is it's an industry-proven product that has a great company behind it and hardware you could just buy, set up, ready to go right now that's reliable, which is going to be a winner for years. But if OpenMediaVault keeps this up, there is some serious momentum that's going to build here. And I think it's at the stage now for me personally, at my personal systems, that it's seriously considerable. So I'm going to deploy it at Angela's house and run it there and watch it. But for myself, and specifically for Lady Jupiter, the hunt goes on. I continue the hunt. I'll tell you one thing I don't want.
Why does Lady Jupiter need to be able to talk to other NFS shares?
Well, here's what, actually, Lady Jupiter has a totally separate problem. I don't want a whole bunch of external storage at all with Lady Jupiter. What I was thinking about is getting a case that could fit a bunch of disks. That's something that's small that I could put under the seat.
Yeah, why not do that?
Yeah, that's a possibility. But in the meantime, because while I was reviewing OpenMediaVault, I was contacted by QNAP because they listened to the Linux Unplugged show, and they're going to send me a review unit of one of their rigs that runs Ubuntu, and this would be an all-in-one unit that I'm going to try out, which I'll probably be getting next week if all goes. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm not sure if it'll probably be arriving when I'm in Seattle on Tuesday. That would be my luck. And so I'm going to try that for a while. And then also on my list of things to try, just from a total competitive feature, is Unraid. And the reason why both the QNAP solution and Unraid are pushing my buttons is they both extensively support virtualization as hosting virtualization. Now, hold on. I know OpenMediaVault does too, but it's not the same. It is more VirtualBox based. I'm not interested in that. These are more KVM, like real virtualization solutions, including hardware pass-through support and things like that in both cases. So there's a possibility that these could also be the multimedia interface to my TV, because they both have HDMI out They both support running a media center instance on there, running Kodi on there directly with hardware acceleration. So because I want to reduce the amount of devices, I don't want to have a NUC and external disk, and I don't want to keep adding to that. I'm trying to keep it one device because it's going under a seat. It's going inside a bench seat, and I want to reduce power usage. I'm going to try out QNAP solution, see how that goes. But I'm expecting that to be too limiting, so I'm kind of also hedging on Unraid because version 6.2 just came out, and they've really improved the Docker and virtualization support in that one. And I think delivering plugins via Docker, which is the same route FreeNAS is about to take, is probably a pretty solid solution. Say what you will about Docker, but there's a lot of people that know how to use it. So I'm kind of hedging on Unraid at this point. Going to see where QNAP falls in. So my personal use for Lady Jupiter, I don't think I'm going to go with OpenMediaVault at this point unless these next two solutions fail me and I double back. In the meantime, I'll be deploying and managing OpenMediaVault at Angela's house to kind of keep an eye on how it goes. So for me right now, not quite taking the FreeNAS crown, not quite replacing the other possibilities, but I was damn impressed. And I think for 90% of people, unless you have some weird use case, I think it checks all the boxes. What was your take? What was your thought?
So the first thing I noticed right off the bat was that when I went to install it, FreeNAS is very much tailored to function like an appliance, and I felt like OpenMediaVault very much functions like a Linux distro with a dedicated purpose. When I go through FreeNAS, I think there's like 3 prompts. What drive do I want to? 2. What drive do I want to install it on, and what do I want? What my root password is, and I click OK, and then everything else it does everything. Yeah. And then when it boots up FreeNAS, I get a menu listing. I get, do you want to configure a network interface? Just press 1. For this, press 2. For this, when OpenMediaVault boots up, it gives me a little message and says, "Here's your current IP," and then here's a login prompt. Log in. And if you have no experience with Linux or command-based file systems, and I'll give you an example. Just a couple of months ago,
well,
I got
at that
a call.
point, they expect you to go to the web interface. They don't even expect you to use the command line.
And if you know what you're doing, that's fine. But a couple of months ago, I had a client that we'd set up a FreeNAS box, and they said, "Hey, our file server doesn't work." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, that'd be a first. That's interesting. So go ahead and go and tell me if it's on, right?" So she goes in there and she goes, "Yeah, the IT guy here says it's booted up to a DOS prompt." I said, "Put him on the phone." So he answers. I said, "Hey, the file server's not working, huh?" He goes, "Yeah, it's just sitting at a DOS prompt." And I said, "Okay." It said is the DOS prompt. What does the DOS prompt say? And he says, and then he's reading me all the options. And I said, well, hit, 1, tell me what the IP is. He said, tell me what the IP is. Okay, fine. So, well, it looks like it's up. I'm like, have you actually gone to look and see if you can access the shares? And he goes, well, no, I just came in here and plugged a monitor into this box for the first time in a couple of years and noticed it was sitting at a DOS prompt. And I'm like, okay, just leave it at the DOS prompt. Don't worry, it's fine. That's how it always is. And he goes, oh, okay, so it runs DOS? I'm like, yeah, it runs DOS. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh.
So he goes, okay, fine, right? But even having no CLI experience at all, clearly, he was able to tell me what the IP address was.
Yeah, the menu prompt system is nice.
So that's thing one I noticed. The second thing is you don't have to have as much information to install FreeNAS as you do to install OpenMediaVault. It asks me a ton of different questions, much like I would if I was installing an operating system.
If you're installing Debian, it's an N-curses-based install.
So that was one of the things I noticed. The second thing is, and I think you've kind of undersold this just a little bit, I disagree that you're not losing anything by going to OpenMediaVault from FreeNAS, and part of that is because I think there is an extensive user support community built around FreeNAS that isn't quite there with OpenMediaVault. There's definitely people out there that use it, and definitely some people you can ask some questions to. But
I kind of disagree. I mean, just because OpenMediaVault troubleshooting generally just comes down to Debian troubleshooting.
Okay, fair enough. But again, you're splitting, right? Now you're going to ask the Debian question, and you have to figure that out. Yeah. You have to figure out, well, this is a Debian problem, so
or is it a UI thing? Yeah, fair enough.
So there's those kinds of things. And then the second thing is like, especially, and I'm kind of surprised you didn't mention this, but especially being involved with Jupiter Broadcasting, having the guy who, and I mean this in the most literal way possible, wrote the book on ZFS. And I'm guessing even if you were running ZFS on OpenMediaVault, the answers you get from Alan if you have a problem are going to be somewhat. You're going to have to sift through the Snyder marks to get to the answer you're looking for. Whereas if you're just using FreeNAS,
I can't include that as part of my review. I mean,
I think I don't know. It's definitely something I considered when I put a FreeNAS machine in my house. Was
that you could ask Alan if you get stuck?
I can ask Alan. I can ask, and you know what's funny is I'm not the only one that thinks that, because when I was talking to Rakai about troubleshooting my FreeNAS when that drive failed, he goes, you could just ask Alan. He knows everything there is to know about FreeNAS. And so and sure enough, he gave me 3 commands and I ran them and I got the box up and running. Fast. So that is one thing. And the last thing I'll point out is just kind of a dovetail to a comment you made. I have this FreeNAS box that I'm running now. Before that, I had one that I just kind of threw together. Right before that, the file server I had was a file server I built when I graduated high school and I moved out in my first apartment. And here's what it was. It was an old IBM server that I repurposed, and I plugged a USB drive into the back of it. And that stupid thing ran for probably 5 years. Yeah. Because he got me out of college. So 2010. Yeah. So, I mean, and I ran it like that for like 5-6 years. And I never had an issue. I booted up every time, had access to it. In fact, the thing that took it out of production was the physical drive inside of the USB enclosure finally failed.
I feel like,
I'm not that nervous about USB storage.
This Western Digital book I'm using for testing too, one of the things I kind of like about it is the RAID controller is in the housing. And so you're not having to, like, the computer isn't doing that, or the USB controller isn't doing that. So I think we have to kind of wrap it up here, but before we move on, I think it deserves its own segment in the review itself, and that is the fact that you can install OpenMediaVault on a Raspberry Pi or an Odroid or something like that is a huge differentiator from FreeNAS, which is x86 based only, and I think opens this son of a bitch up to way more people. You take that, I have that Western Digital book, you hook that up to a Raspberry Pi 3 with OpenMediaVault on it, and you could honestly have a damn, it would be like $190 legitimately, like, RAID backed up NAS solution for the home. I mean, that's no joke, the fact that it supports that, and it's something that many people wish FreeNAS did. So you get all of the stuff we just talked about on a Raspberry Pi. How did that go for you? You tried it. How was it?
I did, and it works. And again, first, so a couple disclaimers. One is I'm terrible at reviews, because if I can store my files on it and I can pull them back off, hey, it works.
That's what it's supposed to do, yeah.
Yeah, so from that perspective. At the same time, I also hate doing reviews you've been using it for a month. I've been using it for a couple of days. Really, I'd want to use it for like a year, and then I'd be able to actually tell you what I think about it.
That's why one of the reasons I want to put it at Angela's and then come back like 6 months to a year later and you do a follow-up.
Yeah. So, but it works, and the thing is, later this afternoon, I am going back over to a friend's. Actually, we did a segment, the Sandbaggers, the group of college kids that are teaching a class in
the House of Linux.
6 of them House of Linux. I'm going back over there. They have a Linux file server, and they want to upgrade it to these Western Digital Reds that they have in USB enclosures. And one of the things that I'm going to talk to them about today is I'm going to give them that Raspberry Pi 3 with OpenMediaVault, because it's going to be easier than trying to repurpose some old piece of crap hardware that I can find laying around. So in small instances like that, I think it has its place. But the really important disclaimer I think you have to keep in mind is that the Raspberry Pi was not manufactured to be an enterprise-grade file server. It's not even really designed to be an enterprise-grade computer. It's designed to be a child's learning toy, and it just so happens to be inexpensive and ubiquitous enough that everyone buys one and comes up with everything known to man to make it work. And they happen to be exceptionally reliable, so people tend to use them.
I think with the Pi 3, though, it's starting to get pretty solid. I mean, it really has.
It's still not,
Yeah, I'm not using it, so I agree. Yeah. But for, the possibilities of like a classroom NAS or like a two-person apartment that doesn't need anything big.
Where the classroom NAS really fits in is in places like Africa because what happens is they can't actually leave a file server inside of an IT room because it will get stolen. So the teacher has to take the file server home.
Remember the other thing that was explained to us. Noah and I had a conversation with a gentleman who's deploying equipment in these areas, and he says the other problem is that the power gets cut off all the time. So you need something that's not a power hog, so that could run off a lithium battery while the power's out for a bit. And so when you have a file server that's turning on and off all the time, sometimes the power comes back on, and the server isn't turned back on, or it's surging for a while. So it's something like a Raspberry Pi that could have a low power disk attached to it could be huge.
But I still am coming back to if a USB drive connected to a NUC makes you nervous, having a USB drive plugged into a Raspberry Pi as your file server.
That's why I'm doing the Odroid.
Is a recipe for a disaster.
I got that's why I do the Odroid. I'm kidding. Yeah, I agree.
Actually, Odroid is probably a step up, to be honest with you.
If nothing else, here's one more. I'll give it one more attempt, then we'll wrap it up. Here's another reason why I think it's a badass method. Picture it, Noah. You ready for this? It's 3 years down the road. Alta Speed is all OpenMediaVault everywhere. Every major client that will listen, you've switched OpenMediaVault. It's powering media displays, all Linux everywhere. And now you got new hires coming on and they've never heard of OpenMediaVault. You give them a Raspberry Pi and a USB hard drive and you say, take that home, kid, come back.
That is a good point. That is an excellent point. And, you know, the other thing is kind of extrapolating onto that. If you want to try OpenMediaVault and give it a shot and see if it works for you, you can do it for $50 rather than a couple hundred. Yeah. That you have me sold 100%.
So I think that's why it's super cool. Plus, I like the idea that an open source project is made available to more people to experiment and extend it because it's on those devices, where FreeNAS is sort of lobbed off on these expensive x86 devices, and that's sort of the entry fee you have to pay to try it. For most of us, that's probably the preferred platform anyways, but for some, there's probably a use case to use it on something else. It is super hard to review something like this, so check back in later on. We'll probably do a follow-up at some point if you guys want it. Leave a comment maybe at YouTube or at the Linux Action Show subreddit, or send in an email and let us know if you'd like a follow-up review, because it's kind of hard to tell if you guys do people really care about this kind of stuff? I mean, it's a file server. Do you want to know what it was like a year later, 6 months later? Let us know in the comments what time frame you think is appropriate and if you would actually like to hear it, or if covering it once is good enough for you. But hopefully you found something useful. And I would say at the end of the day, when you're considering a file server, be it FreeNAS or Unraid or a pre-built box, I'd say you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least try out and take a look at OpenMediaVault. They've got something special there, and version 3 looks like it promises to be better than ever. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. We got some emails to get into and a few other things to mention. Like System 76, as a matter of fact. System 76 are the creators of machines designed, born to run Linux. You know, we were talking about that Lenovo shit show earlier this week. This would be an example where you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. And remember I was mentioning their lineup is just crazier than ever? The Bonobo workstation just got an update. This son of a gun now has GTX 10 series configurations with a dual GPU option. Holy crap. And 120 hertz refresh rate on the screen. Unbelievable. With 6th generation Intel processors, up to 5 terabytes of storage. The drive configuration in this thing is worth visiting the System 76 page alone. You want to see something incredible, check it out. No wonder Pixar uses System 76 rigs for their Linux production. If you want a nice, reliable system with unbelievable performance, I mean, dual GTX 10 series in a laptop with 5 terabytes of storage and 120 hertz refresh rate, 17-inch monitor, that is a monster that could do just about anything. That could be an entire open source production setup in one box. Of course, I got a whole range of machines, laptops, desktops, light and portables, all-in-one desktops. Check them out at system76.com. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Is that 2 display ports? That thing, HDMI, 2 display ports, and dual Ethernet, a lot of USB 3. Oh, man. That thing's a monster. You have Bonobo envy. I really, really do. If the price of Bitcoin gets up to like $900, you're like, can we just have a rally on Bitcoin? Anyways, let's get to the mail. So how do you suppose, Christian, or how do you suppose you say this first one? Christarian? What do you think? What are you going to go with? Come on, Noah. What are you going with? Come on.
K-Dog.
Oh, what a cop-out. All right, K-Dog writes in about the proper use of a touchpad. He says, hello, guys, or she. My question may be silly, but I'm trying from a year or more. I've been trying for more than a year to find a proper way to use and configure my trackpad on GNU/Linux. Could you suggest some information online? Because I'm looking in particular how to use like the position of the hands, proper configuration under Linux, palm tracking, sensitivity, coasting, scrolling, all of that. Do you have any advice on that one, Noah?
So I've only had one laptop that ran Linux that actually worked what I call properly with a touchpad, and that was the original XPS 13. And I could use my index finger to move the mouse like I ordinarily did, and click with my thumb and leave my thumb resting on the trackpad, and it would work. Never before or since then have I ever touched one of those ClickPad things that actually worked on. So what I've done is I've gotten to a point where I just use my index finger to move around, and that way I don't have to worry about trying to adjust the sensitivity and stuff. And I actually, if anyone's interested in it, you can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on the contact link, click on Ask Noah, and I'll email it to you. But I have an Xorg configuration that has like all of the sensitivity things and the scrolling things and all that set up so that it kind of works. And I'd say it's like 95% of the way there. It mostly works, but it's just easier to retrain yourself to use your index finger. But I had the same question when I started using Linux on some of those touchpad devices. I wasn't super impressed. These days, I've said screw it to the touchpad, and I just use my
clicker,
my track point.
So, K-Dog, this is going to sound weird, but even if you're not an Arch user, check out the Arch Wiki on this, because there's a lot of good stuff in there where it can help you figure out what type of trackpad you have and if there's drivers you could install to supplement its performance. So that's just my general tip, is go read about it on the Arch Wiki. You might have to translate a couple of commands, but really it tells you just how to use like hardware detection commands and proc files to cat. It's just all common Linux stuff. It just is documented well there. So that would be my recommendation. Do you want to read Jeff's email there, Mr. Noah?
Yes, sir. I just got it pulled up here.
Wow.
I got kicked out of the dock.
That's okay. Fair enough.
That's what happened. All
Sure,
right.
yeah.
So Jeff writes in, and he wants to ask you a question about wallpaper changes. He says, I think it was in last week's last that you were showing off a desktop with the wallpaper changer app that took random wallpapers from an online source and sets them for you. Like going to something similar because it's good to have variety. You said you are just collecting your favorite wallpaper images to a single folder so that you can cycle through them instead of randomly grabbing an entire online source, because wallpaper slideshows do not seem to be backed in the GNOME desktop environment, and I cannot find a wallpaper changer. Like, I am instead using a script, which is running in the background and changes the wallpaper every 10 minutes. I don't know if it's shared already with you, but here's the script I use for changing wallpaper.
Cool.
And then he includes a bash script. So if anyone out there is interested in changing their wallpapers via a script rather than an actual utility, we have that and made it available to you in this week's show notes.
Yeah, and Noah, you know this. I do use Variety. That is the name of the application I use.
Yes, I do.
It was an app pick that Noah picked a while ago, and you go in here and you say, download from these sources: wallbase.cc, Flickr, wallpapers.net. You can set some configuration settings, like I have mine. It adds a clock to my desktop, which is nice, so you can see there's the time and the date. And it's very zen because of the backgrounds I've kind of zeroed in on. So it actually makes for an extremely nice desktop. And then to kind of complement the backgrounds, I have a transparent GNOME bar here at the top, which becomes solid if I maximize one of my windows, so it all kind of matches, but otherwise remains transparent. So it all really kind of fits together quite nicely. One of the other things that's really cool to play with, if you've never done this, is play around with blurring your background. I'll just do for experimentation purposes. I'll set a heavy blur. It makes windows pop.
Yeah.
It actually helps you focus.
Is the term you're looking for?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, well, because one window's in focus, then everything else is out of focus, so it makes that one thing that's in focus stand out a lot more.
Not to be a lens nerd, but bokeh is technically the effect of how the lighting and things look.
The quality of the blur.
Yes, yes. But you get the idea, and it's actually a pretty slick effect that I sometimes like to turn on when I'm doing like screenshot demos and things like that, because it helps your eye focus on there. So Variety runs in the background, and every now and then when you get a humdinger, you just right-click on it and you say Add to Favorites, and you say, this is where I want you to download all the photos. This is where I want you to save my favorite photos. And I just populate a folder there, and then I picture the next time I reload this machine, instead of installing Variety, I'll just copy that Favorites images folder, and I'll just have a bunch of great ones to pick from.
Sure.
And
that's great.
I think I have it changed like every 45 minutes or half hour. So if you watch from beginning to the end of a show, you might see my background change at the from the end of the show. But I like it a lot. So yeah, was it Jeff? There you go, Jeff. It's that is Variety. But thanks for sending your bash script too. Now, if you have a question, don't forget, you can ask Noah on Tuesday. Call him 1-877-347-0011. JBLive.tv is where you can watch it. If you call in, please mute your stream. You got to mute your stream, otherwise you get the radio echo effect. Just the same thing, because there's a compression delay. So it really messes with you when you call in. So call in, mute the stream. Will they be able to hear the stream when they're on hold?
I don't think so.
That'll be tricky.
If I have a little bit more time, I can make that happen, but I don't. The way it's looking
seems really hard to pull off without some serious plumbing.
It is.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. But I think this could be a great if this was something that took off, and the community wanted to help us. I could really see this becoming a thing. But we're gonna try it out while Wes and I are out. So we'd love to have you participate. Again, it's 1-877-347-0011, and that phone number is listed in the show notes too. And you can find when it's live at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Just like this here show, we do it live on Sundays. You can get the time in your local time zone there at the calendar. You can follow that guy on the Twitters. He's what? What are you?
At Colonel Linux.
Oh, weird. Just like that in the lower third there. I am at Chris LAS, and the network is at Jupiter Signal. And you can probably figure out the separation there. I do personal tweets and sometimes network stuff, but the Signal account is really network news, announcements, live shows, releasements, all that kind of stuff. Oh, my Spider buddy's back. Spider came out to see the end of the show. Mr. Spider came to send us off. Don't forget your comments, your news stories, projects you want us to talk about. All much appreciated at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. And grab those RSS feeds to just get every single episode. When we put it out, you'll find them at jupiterbroadcasting.com. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. And we'll see you right back here next week. Oh, and then, of course, I just see a spider. Man, it's that time of year.
Spider in the studio.
Yep, spider in the studio.
That would freak me out.
Oh, yeah? Really?
I just don't like spiders.
Yeah, it's a black one. It's just moving around right now on the ceiling. It's going...
This is what we need. I need a C920 mounted to the... Or whatever, C930.
It's gonna... Here's what sucks.
930E mounted to the corner so we can see this.
Here's what sucks, man. Is it's going towards the insulation. It's going to go live in the insulation on the ceiling. And then once it gets under there, I'll never find it.
You know what you need?
What?
Did it bite you? Did it bite you?
No, it's just that gross.
Hello?
It's going under the insulation right now, the soundproofing. And now I'm not going to be able to get to it.
He'll come out the other end right when you're in the middle of an ad read.
This is going to give me... I don't like it. I don't like it. It's going to give me...
We need a camera.
Don't go in there. I wish I had some spider spray or something. There he goes. There he goes. And he's under the insulation. I'd say he's about yay big and black.
Yeah, he's a big one, huh?
Well, he's fully extended. I mean, his body isn't that big.
We have this like infestation of mosquitoes. I think because they stopped spraying the poison for the year, and so there's like hundreds of them all over the place. And I was like, there's like this mass of them in my backyard. I think because I cut some bushes down, there was some pooling water. But I walked through, and all of a sudden, it was weird. It was like, when you walk through a spider web and you kind of feel it drag across your face? Well, it felt like that, only in all different directions. Like, what? Oh my God, those are bugs. There's bugs everywhere.
You're telling me that after driving around and literally poisoning everyone for an entire season, that as soon as they stop, the mosquitoes just go crazy? What's the effing point?
That's probably why they spray the poison, to keep them.
Yeah, but don't you see how that's just a cyclical problem? If they would eventually, you just got to stop spraying the poison, and you got to eat your vegetables for a couple of years and let the ecosystem balance out.
See, now this is what my mom says. She says that when they spray all that poison, it kills all the dragonflies, and then or whatever.
That is a thing. That is a thing.
Then they don't eat the mosquitoes.
Everybody knows that.
They screw everything up.
Everybody knows that.
If they would just stop spraying altogether, then the dragonflies would eat all the mosquitoes. We wouldn't have the problem to begin with.
Or import dragonflies at a premium price, $2 each. $2 each.
We just kill them all every year. Well, most of them.
So, and if you guys aren't from Noah's neck of the woods, or maybe if your area may or may not do this, they literally, you'll just be standing there, and they're usually nice. They seem to turn off the poison for a few seconds as they actually drive by you, but then once they're 5 feet past you, they just flip the poison back on.
Yeah.
It is like literally something out of the 50s. It really is. Of course, so is Blue Friday or Sunday. So, but it's kind of adorable. I sometimes think, geez, if it wasn't the fact that you have crazy ass winters, I could see myself spending November in just Grand Forks or something. But
there's just a lot of things that just they kind of culminate together, like the fact they come to a show live and you take your pants off. Yeah, sit next to me. That happened.
Did it? I don't remember that.
Definitely happened.
I don't remember that.
In the outtakes.
I doubt it. All right, here we go, Noah. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh. Oh. It's Open Media Vault. You ready? Could you quit screwing around?
Okay. Yes, sir. Sorry, Dad.
All right. Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry.
In a 3, in a 2. Are you good? Oh, he went back underneath.
Do you realize the first part of the spider thing isn't in the show?
Yeah.
So now nobody's going to have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Spider
Okay.
Buddy's back. Wait, what do you mean he's back?
Here,
He's
I'll do
never
a
out.
thing that Rikai could put in the outtakes, okay? I'm going to put a thing in the outtakes for Rikai.
You're planning the outtakes? This seems cheesy.
I'm just helping him set it up, dude. Give me a break. Okay, you ready? You ready? Noah, there's a spider in the studio, and it's crawling out right now. There you go. See?
Ooh,
Now they'll know what I was talking about when it all comes together in the end.